Now our next performer is Remi Kanazi. Remi Kanazi is a Palestinian-American performance poet and human rights activist based from New York City. Kanazi was the son of Palestinian refugees who fled Palestine in 1948. He later gained his love for Palestine after connecting with fellow Arab Americans in college. I present to you editor of Poets for Palestine and author of Poetic Injustice, Remi Kanazi.
Mic check, can you hear that? Okay, cool. I'm on tour, so I've been lucky enough to connect with a lot of Palestine groups over the last few weeks, especially this month. The first 2 weeks of this month was Israeli Apartheid Week, so I was touring the US and Canada. My voice isn't what it should be, so I'm going to use the mic for some poems and then I will walk around for others. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a Palestinian-American poet. I grew up in Western Massachusetts. I think that bio was from my Wikipedia page, where like somebody created it, and then it was like, let me cram in as many like awkward, embarrassing things as I possibly can onto a Wikipedia page, and then call it your Wikipedia page. So basically, I grew up in a small town in Western Massachusetts. Now, in that small town, there were 9,000 people. Of those 9,000 people, 8,990 of them were white. And then there was like my brown Arab family. We got like a Cambodian family in the 8th grade. And I had this awkward thing called the Palestinian mother. Now, that Palestinian mother was really proud to be Palestinian, and what scared the living hell out of the children in the neighborhood is that she was proud to be Palestinian in public. Now, me, I was a fat, brown, one-eyebrow child going to Catholic school. So let's just say I wasn't kicking too much game. This has nothing to do whatsoever with the first angry poem that I'm going to do, but I wanted a little bit of background. I moved to New York City 4 months before 9/11. That wasn't awkward. So I went from this like collective minority in Western Massachusetts to, hey, are you Italian in New York City? So it went from like identity crisis to identity crisis. Now, my grandparents are refugees from 1948. My mother's side's from Jaffa and was kicked out, and my father's side's from Haifa, and they fled in early 48. And you know, my grandmother was 7 months pregnant with my mother when she was kicked out, and until my grandmother's dying day, everything was Jaffa, Jaffa, Jaffa. It was always about return. And so for me, when I first became a poet, the first thing I came back to were my grandmother's stories about exile, about dispossession, about longing for home. But because there are so many different awesome acts, I'm going to start off with what would be considered a angry poem. I like to think of it as happy passion. Now, I was just touring the UK. Now, you guys know the BBC? Okay. Now, like, they consider the BBC like really right-wing over there, and it's awkward because we think it's like leftist socialist propaganda. So the first poem I'm going to do is called Coexistence. Now, I don't mean in the happy way that we're all coexisting today. I mean in the CNN type of way, where if the Palestinians only come to the table and give up 90% of their homeland and stay in Bantustans and ghettos and give up the right of return and negotiate for the next 100 years, then maybe Israel will give them some small sliver of historic Palestine. I'm not really a fan of that, so I wrote this poem called Coexistence. This will probably be one of the happier poems I do tonight. Alright, we're moving in the middle. I can't see you guys. I'm a poet, so I like the whole eye contact thing. Don't make noise. Sure. Okay. Hi, how are you, front row people? Really nice to meet you. Thank you. I love front row people. I'm going to talk to you guys in a minute, but that's for a different poem. I don't want to coexist. Not like good guys and bad guys and true lies and propaganda. Put on blackface as cab drivers or deli owners in your racist comedies. Not bomb your Dunkin' Donuts with my keffiyeh, fist pound Fox News, or let you steal my food and call it Israeli salad. I won't mess with the Zohan or let them turn the rocks of Palestinian children into balloon animals, while Israeli soldiers snipe our children's heads, shoulders, knees, and stomachs. Hollywood snipes years of young ones with lovable tales of blue and white heroes. I'm not looking for your approval, not a token roll or job on my knees scrubbing toilets in Israel's Congress. I'd rather fight with blacks and Latinos against oppression than concede to a mainstream plantation that sees me as other unless I'm checking a college application. I don't believe in the tooth fairy or 2,000 claims of homes you supposedly deserved when people resurrected and walked on water all exist. In a world that fights fights against racism like Martin and Malcolm, bleeds ghetto tales as Stephen Biko, as a song that never dies, no matter what apartheid makes of our bodies, feeds mouths and Belfast streets, and resurrects Bobby Sands' message so that we'll never be hungry again. And whether you know it or not, I'm the best solution you have. One man asking for one vote, telling you to look at the sea, and I'll never drag you into it. I'll never return the favor. I'm not stretching an olive branch and a rifle. I'm extending reality. Because being surrounded by so-called enemies on your borders is easier than in your towns and election centers. We may not be brothers, but this neighborhood has made us cousins. I don't want to coexist. I want to exist as a human being. And justice will take care of the rest. I was going to call that love poem for Tel Aviv, but thought that it would have been awkward. I'm going to switch it up today. I'm going to do a bunch of Palestine stuff, and then I'm going to do a little bit about that's not Palestine. For me, so I grew up in this small town in Western Massachusetts, but I learned about Palestine through the anti-apartheid struggle. I learned about Palestine through the civil rights movement and the Great Boycott, and people standing up against police brutality in my own community. So for me, whether you're standing with Egypt or Tunisia, or you're fighting against discrimination on the US-Mexico border, or Barack Obama ethnically cleansing 1 million undocumented people over the last 3 years, or it's standing in solidarity with people rising up to see that another Trayvon Martin, another Troy Davis, another Amadou Diallo, another Aiyana Jones doesn't happen. So for me, it's about standing against systems of oppression, so it's not just about the issue of Palestine. But the next piece I'm going to do is called The Do's and Don'ts of Palestine. Now, let's go off mic for this one. Here's the thing. You guys live in Jersey, so that's close enough to New York. I know I live in Brooklyn, so we pick on you guys a lot. But it's close enough. It's okay, Princeton, we like you. Here's the thing. It is post 9/11. You don't want to be too brown. You don't want to be too angry. I see some covered people in the audience. You don't want to scare the kids. So you have to lighten your tone. Now, I know pragmatism might seem like giving up your rights, but this is a sarcastic take called The Do's and Don'ts of Palestine. A lot of my work, I try to tackle media bias and double standards. And this one, I guess, is no different. So this is called The Do's and Don'ts of Palestine. Raise your hand if you're a Palestinian. Sweet, all right. All right, I'm taking notes with NYPD. And all you Muslims, if you're going on any kayaking trips. I know it's a little cold today, but it might come by sometime. So this is called The Do's and Don'ts of Palestine. And then we'll do a poem about that. Yay, awesome. Infiltration, that's really rude. Thank you. Protect and serve rude interests. I'm very serious. Oh, can I look at you? Is that me? Am I going to scare you? Hi, how are you? What's your name?
Hi.
My name's Remi. Does this scare you, me being so close? I need to pick somebody for the first line. Okay. It's okay. Don't call it genocide. We don't want to offend anyone. If we offend them, they'll never listen to us. We have to be reasonable. 1,400, just a number. No names, no death. We want peace and negotiations. Don't mention Zionism. If you mention Zionism, they're going to call you anti-Semitic, and people will believe them. Don't cite Palestinian sources. No one would believe you. I wouldn't believe you. Trust Israeli sources. Don't ever be angry. If you're angry, they're going to call you angry. If you're... Oh, I got to find a white person. Okay. If you're angry, everyone's going to call you understandably emotional. We have to be pragmatic. Pragmatism is not a euphemism for concessions, although it may feel that way. Don't mention Allah or martyrs. It reminds them of Al-Qaeda and 9/11. It's not your job to actually fix their ignorance. Don't talk about refugees, boycott, or the one-state solution. If we want to win, we gotta compromise. The road to peace is just ahead. Don't. Whatever you do, don't. This goes out to all of you. Don't make analogies that include the Holocaust, Nazis, or the Warsaw Ghetto. Only Israelis are allowed to do this when discussing wars on Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. Don't mention Haifa, Jaffa, Safed, or where your family's from. But if you do, not when random people say they love Israel. It doesn't matter where you came from. You can't actually go back. Don't, just don't, and that will lead to doing. heard some radicals clapping pretty hard over there. I'm watching you. Good thing I'm a good mental note taker. It'll always look suspicious when you do it in front of them. I'm gonna do, because I mean, there's like a billion awesome performers tonight, so I don't want to do too much. So I will keep it going. Normally I'm a talker. I have that problem. I could talk to a brick wall for an hour. So I like tell like 10-minute stories in between the poem, and you're like, just do some poems. So the next poem we're going to do is called Yafa. Oh, look at this pretty book. It's shiny. It shines even in the light. It's called Poetic Injustice, Writings on Resistance and Palestine. My mom said this is the coolest thing to come out since slap bracelets. I don't even think my mom knows what slap bracelets are, but she loves me and she wouldn't mind if I said that. Do we? Oh, get out of here, really? Oh. That joke worked out much better now. Also, we sell it for $15. We also take credit cards in case you want to mortgage your future. I know the economy is doing pretty poorly. And Arabs in the audience, it comes with a CD. There's a CD in the back. I don't have one in this book, so it's a deal. It's more like $7.50 each. And so, you know, let's say you're at a red light and they're like, oh my God, Mahmoud's really angry today. No, just bumping Remi's CD in the car. It's good stuff. So I'm not going to talk, I'm going to do a poem. But, so this poem is dedicated to my Teta Leonie, and you know, the Gaza monologues were amazing, and for anybody that has the urge and hasn't done it yet, if you get the chance to go to Palestine, I would urge you to do so. For me as a Palestinian growing up in the US, I've been 3 times, and I'll be back there I think twice in 2012, and there's no experience that can put back into proper place what's going on, like actually going for yourself. No documentary, no music, no song you can listen to. And you know, so my grandmother wasn't in like a proper condition to read the book before it came out. And you know, if you ever get a chance to talk to a refugee, and that refugee doesn't have to be Palestinian, it is a world into beauty and a heartbreak and brilliance in a way that I can't properly put down on page. But this poem, Yafa, is also about my brother and I's first experience being in Palestine. And then right directly after that, I'll read a couple of, there's 3-line poems. There's 48 3-line poems in the book, split up into 4 different sections, each one to signify one of my displaced grandparents in 1948. So I'll read a couple of those too. And then I'll end with like angry and angrier. The poem will be called Shattering Stereotypes. She no longer recognizes my face. Never will again, but can still smell her oranges. Feel the sun kiss her face as if on her balcony in Yafa, 61 years later. Described like the most magnificent villa, must have been 7 stories tall, spanned half the neighborhood, tree branches opened like arms. So trunks could witness its beauty. I visited the house with my brother. Israeli cab driver said he'd never heard of the street. Palestinian presence must have made his memory fail. My grandmother was a painter, mostly landscapes. Now she can only describe them words like poetry, thoughts like scholars. No matter how much I read and write, I always feel like a student in the presence of refugees. My grandmother's stories came back like Haifa's waves. The outside world may never mention their names, but the roots of olive trees will never forget what happened. So the first section of the 3-line poems I'm going to read from is called Nejla, which is my teta on my father's side, and then I'll end with Leonie, who is on my mother's side. I wasn't going to read these tonight, but I figured with the Gaza monologues, you know, it's important to hear the stories. I know there's a lot of students in the audience. I was a business major when I was in college. I think there's this misconception that it only can be the English lit major, you know, or something like that, or comparative literature that becomes a writer. And what I find is some of the most brilliant writers and teachers I know today didn't start off in that direction. So even if you're an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, or, you know, I guess pre-med or whatever, it's good to get our narrative down on paper. It's good to share those stories. I became a poet because I saw other poets. They made me want to write. So Yeah. He lifted up his shirt, showed me 2 bullets that pierced his shoulder, lifted up his pant leg, showed me where a tear gas canister shattered his kneecap. Never touched a gun or picked up a rock. His loud voice, more powerful than any cannon. Oh, you don't have to pat in between, but thank you. And you're an organizer too. Thank you so much for the organizers for having me out. I'll say that after again, but you guys are awesome. Okay. Not because you had me out, but just because you're awesome generally. I like the work. The soldier stroked his gun as he looked at the young girl, raped her with his eyes, occupied every part of her being. She said nothing, stared at the ground, and kept walking. One more checkpoint until she's home. In Gaza, an Israeli soldier remains in prison. The world knows his name and the conditions to set him free. 7,700 Palestinians wallow in Israeli dungeons. The world cannot mention their names because they never bothered to learn them. And the last one. She closes her eyes, smells the sea salt, takes in a deep breath, and feels the wind hug her arms as her father once did for a split second. She imagines they've returned, where she was born, where she belongs. Yoshi, how much time do I have? I should read emails, but I don't. Okay, fine. That's about as, yeah, okay. I'm gonna do 2 more. And the 2 more are gonna be these ones. I have no idea. Okay, this one goes out to Michael Bloomberg. Yeah, okay. Not really, kind of. Here's the thing. Okay, so I've been in New York for the last 11 years. I grew up in a small town in Western Massachusetts. When those 2 towers came down, there was so much vitriolic language. And there was that, we need to go and turn that place into a parking lot mentality. We need to go and nuke them and start over. And after 9/11, there was the systematic dehumanization of the Arab and Muslim male. And this is something that happened in the country to Black and Latino males long before. And there's this kind of idea that, like, you know, does everybody know about Trayvon Martin in Florida? Armed just with Skittles, 17-year-old kid was gunned down like a piece of meat in the street. And then do we know about Sergeant Bales, who killed 16 Afghans? Raise your hand if you know about Sergeant Bales. Okay, oh, there's a lot of you read the paper. Now, Sergeant Bales was over in Afghanistan. He gunned down 16 Afghans. I know his name.
17. The last one was 17.
Okay.
Wounded died.
Another guy, okay. So 17 people who were gunned down in Afghanistan. I know Sergeant Bales' name. I know what sports team he played on. I know his coach's story. I know where he grew up. I know his favorite color. You know what I don't know from listening to the US press? Just one of the names of the Afghans killed. And one of the things is that if you can strip away somebody's humanity, if you can just say, well, you know, it's another black kid and he was wearing a hoodie, or it's just another Afghan, or, you know, they were probably in the Taliban, or cousins of the Taliban, or knew somebody in the Taliban, or one time they watched this YouTube video and it said the word Taliban, so we bombed the living hell out of their neighborhood. And this is the kind of thing that keeps on happening. Men matter. Human life matters. Whether you're in Guatemala, whether you're in Chile, whether you're near Baghdad, or whether you're in New York City, it's human life that should be protected. And it's something that has kind of slipped away out of our general thinking. So this is called Before the Machetes Are Raised, and it goes out to people who are just trying to live their lives and then end up falling under US bombs and white phosphorus. It's a love poem. I'm disgusted by terrorism. Backwards animals who have no value for human life. Produce propaganda videos to disseminate their message. Prey on the weakest in society. Infect children. Recruit fighters. Like expendable ants in their ideological struggle. You know who I'm talking about. Soldiers. who drop bunker-busting bombs on mosques and university, decry the Middle East, but follow authority closer than dictatorial rule, think stripes and codes rather than decency and humanity give them worth in this world. I've seen one too many Facebook invites by jingoistic kids I went to high school and grade school with. Couldn't wait to get in some trigger time. Hunt down pal heads and hajis like venison. And when some Marine grenade launcher catapults 120 mini bombs per minute, takes out 17 houses and 14 schoolgirls, I'm supposed to feel bad that he can't see his wife and daughter on Christmas. Respect his service. When he comes back to the States, a murderer who destroyed a country full of daughters and wives that'll never see Eid. We're so quick to honor the troops, but don't dare mention the widows, the trembling father crying, immersed in his wife's charred flesh, a fetus, blown out of her stomach. The soldier said, kicking down the door was too risky. Worse than love for the 25-year-old Iraqi man whose car was riddled with American-made bullets, pained face and surprised look like grabbing for sky, falling in 110-story towers. As long as we don't affect our interests, we'll shout out Darfur, Rwanda, and the need for antiretrovirals. Look at people's aid packages who can't compete. No laughing. Look at people's aid packages who can't compete, rather than ravage lands perfecting paradigms of imperialism and propaganda. Where's that right-wing Zionist trying to save the Congo, combating Lev Leviathan in Angola, genocide in northern Uganda? Where's the humanity? Before the machetes are raised and proxy forces put into place. King, Mandela, and Gandhi aren't meant to be easy reference platitudes to make you feel better at night. Help you forget that uncomfortable poem Americans don't want to face. We'll worship American idols have no value for human life. And yet all I hear are 20-somethings telling me they just aren't into politics. I wonder what they'd say at their parents' eulogy after they were blown up into 386 different pieces. I'm sure they wouldn't discuss things. Because politics, well, it isn't their thing. Politics isn't our thing. While we reach out for freedom and justice, we're defined as political. To undermine our suffering, create notion of two sides and equal conflict, cover up our dispossession, and burn down villages, we're political. So the world can ignore us, delegitimize and forget us. But we're human beings gracing the window pane, reflecting stillborn images. We're voices, chiming choirs and temples. We're life that won't be forgotten. We're here, and we won't go away. We're the world shiver. It's cold out here. And whether you like it or not, we're coming inside. Yes. All right, we're gonna end on this note. Now, normally, like, you kind of have like a poem that you end with, but because you guys were gonna do, you're gonna do an action today, right? Was that like publicly known? No? Anyway, yeah, I'm looking at you, Yoshi. Oh. We were rained out. Yeah, okay, you guys were rained out. Raise your hand if you know what BDS is. Okay, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Okay, awesome. Acronyms. In 2005, Palestinian civil society called for comprehensive boycott, divestment, and sanctions until Israel complied with 3 basic demands. Number 1, the end of occupation of all Arab land and taking down of the apartheid wall in accordance with the International Court of Justice ruling in 2004. That seems happy and simple. Number 2, equality for all Palestinians living inside of the state of Israel. Equality sounds kind of awesome. And the right of return for Palestinian refugees who were ethnically cleansed from their homeland. Ethnic cleansing doesn't sound very nice. So, I am on the organizing committee for the U.S. campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel. Yesterday was Land Day. It was Cesar Chavez Day. It was also BDS Global Day of Action Day. So the last poem I'm going to end on is called "This Poem Will Not End Apartheid." And for me, inaction is not an option. If you see an injustice, it's good to educate, it's good to advocate, but most importantly, we need to act against the injustice that we see. It is our government that gives $3 billion in military aid a year to Israel. It's our government that's giving Apache helicopters and Hellfire missiles and cluster bombs and white phosphorus that are then used against civilian populations in open-air prison. It's our government that has preferential trade agreements, allows people in New Jersey to raise money for settlements in the West Bank that are ethnically cleansing Palestinians. So it's up to us to stand up against those actions. This is called This Poem Will Not End Apartheid, and it discusses a lot of that. And lastly, I have my book out there. My mom says that if you get a signed copy, it's like a Mickey Mantle, and then you buy it, you put it under your bed, and then like 5 years later, it's worth like $8,000. I'm assuming everybody here didn't win Powerball last night. Unless you were here to celebrate and you actually did win, you know. Okay, cool. Mic or no mic?
No mic.
Oh, good, thank you. It's like, my throat's going anyway. Hey, I made it stop. Mic check. I was like, I really made it stop. Ooh, back. This poem will not end apartheid. My words, no matter how beautiful, clever, or carefully strung together, will not end the occupation, allow the refugees to return, or create equality within Israeli society. The status quo is a fantasy, telling us it's okay to sit on our hands. Called political art propaganda, rather than those who politicize our lives, propagandists. Every American should ask themselves this question: why are bombs and white phosphorus getting dropped on open-air prisons with money that should be going to pay for your medical expenses? And dear academics and leftists, I appreciate your books on Israeli massacres, but you refuse to take the bullets out of IDF guns with your stances. The problem is not just the occupation or putting a better face on Zionism, because 750,000 Palestinians were displaced before those settlements were constructed, half of them before Israel was created. We don't need another book explaining the situation. We need a lesson plan. Stop the next bomb from dropping. Silence is complicity. Over-intellectualization tells us to theorize on the power of art. While farmers are kicked off land, children are stolen on the way to school, people are caged and beaten and split from loved ones, bombed and broken in open-air prison, bought and paid for with our tax dollars. We're part of the problem. That is not theoretical. I don't want to hug a segregationist, wave to you at a separate water fountain, or appeal to you from the back of the bus. A day will come, I swear to you all, when Zionists cower and embarrassment, deny involvement like those who profited off of Stephen Biko's lifeless body and Bobby Sands' empty stomach. So yes, I'm going to boycott all Israeli products and go to the root of the conflict, because settlements are just the branches of a Zionist program. Every 729, cultural institution, and dialogue farce, from Sabra to Ahava, SodaStream to Motorola, Lev Leviav and Motorola, signing a 2-year contract. It stacks up little to 63 years of continued ethnic cleansing. Finally, to all you other artists, building bridges between apartheid and normalization, you serve an agenda which rebrands colonialism as enlightened liberalism. Concerts, ballets, and raves in Israel's Sun City, a haven and party stop for pinkwashers who callously ignore Palestinian LGBT groups fighting against all systems of oppression. Palestinian civil society has spoken. Don't cross this picket line or cash in that paycheck sign apartheid. Put down stolen beauty, cancel that gig, and join the rest of us on the right side of history.